Welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, November the 8th, 2017, show number 1155. I am your host, Shawn King. Joining me again in an interim position for the time being.
Hi, everyone.
That's Melissa.
It's Melissa.
She pisses me off anymore.
I'm on trial.
On trial. This is the beta.
I'm on probation.
Yeah, this is the beta of the show. As always, we'll talk to our friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. We're going to talk to Jim about Apple taxes. Been a couple of stories in the news over the weekend and the last couple of days of these things called the Paradise Papers. And basically, legally or not, a bunch of documents from a law firm have been released to a German website newspaper. And it details how billionaires have been laundering money is an illegal term, but certainly stashing money in different places around the world in order to prevent or avoid paying taxes. Apple is one of the culprits. So is the Queen of England and numerous other people. We'll talk to Jim about that, whether or not that's a good thing, a bad thing. We've had this discussion before, but this one seems a bit more serious, if only because there's more action being taken on Apple's part. They're being less passive about this and more aggressive about it. And that might be the sticking point for a lot of people. Also, Jim has updated his iPhone 10 review and found out some more details. We'll talk to him about those. In the starting point for the segment, we're going to talk about beginning photo editing. You've taken the shots. What do you do next? As I always say, editing is half the work of photography, so you've got to learn to do it and do it well. But for a lot of people, they'll go out and they'll take 50 shots or 100 shots or 200 shots, and they get overwhelmed when they need to edit those shots. We're going to talk about the process you can go through in order to whittle those shots down before you start the actual editing. And then on next week's show, we'll do a little more detail about editing. Also, Melissa, the cute one over there, has got some Face ID questions. And where did these Face ID questions come from? Why do you suddenly have questions about Face ID?
Oh, I didn't so much. It wasn't questions so much. We talked about how people perceive it as some weird invasive security threat.
True.
Yeah. So, or for some reason, because it's Face ID. So we talked about that. I asked people about it and what they thought. And
I think a lot of the issue is, I don't want to blame Apple, but maybe Apple isn't explaining it well enough, or certainly the media isn't explaining it well enough. The problem is our media, as you and I have talked about many times, works in sound bites. It's a whole lot easier, and works in sound bites and works in scaring people. So it's a whole lot easier to do a 10-second sound bite of how scary this can be than it would be to do a 3-minute segment on why it's not scary at all.
Right.
So that's what we're going to do. Melissa actually talked to some average, everyday folks, friends and coworkers and acquaintances of yours, and got their thoughts and opinions about it. And we'll talk about those a little later on the show. But as I said in the pre-show, oh, by the way, as always, send us emails to onair at yourmaclifeshow.com. I love getting emails from you guys. If you have any thoughts about anything we talk about or any thoughts that you want to get across, send us emails to onair at yourmaclifeshow.com. Don't forget, we're also still in the process of voting on whether or not Melissa can stay. So you're welcome to enter in your vote. We've got so far a few hundred, and it's looking pretty good. I got to admit, it's you all seem to like her.
Do I get paid now?
No. You ain't getting a dime. You get adulation.
I get adulation. Okay.
And maybe some more Instagram and Facebook and Twitter followers.
Oh, well, okay. That doesn't really fulfill my life very much. Okay.
Won't get you anywhere.
Nope.
Won't get you. Although it's great. First of all, as I've always said, it's great having a co-host, but having a female co-host. Because I got, coincidentally, last week, I got an email from a company asking me if I wanted to review these handbags.
Right, that's right.
And they're ladies' handbags. I was like, no, but now I can.
I could have done it and not been your co-hostess.
No, I wouldn't let you.
Oh. Huh.
I wouldn't have known you. Why would I?
Oh.
Anyway, I have, as I said off the top during the pre-show, I have concrete proof of how and why Face ID is better than Touch ID. Want to know?
Is it related to that article that you read to me?
According to The Guardian, a couple on a flight from Doha, Qatar to Bali, Indonesia got into a fight after the wife unlocked her sleeping husband's smartphone with his fingerprint and discovered he was having an affair.
That's right. Yes.
Apparently this woman got a little tipsy on the flight. Him and her got into a fight, and as guys will do, he was like, "I'm going to go to sleep. I'm not fighting with you all the way from Qatar to Indonesia. This is a 15-hour flight.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it." Okay, so he goes nappies, and it's very funny the different points of view here. I said he's an idiot for leaving his phone out, and Melissa rightfully said he's an idiot.
Well, he's an idiot. She's suspicious, and she's
For having
drunk
the
and
affair.
For having the affair.
Exactly.
Like, just,
Right.
you know.
But it's just reading the story. The woman repeatedly hit her husband after learning of his infidelity, and the captain was forced to make an unscheduled stop in Chennai, India, when the cabin crew was unable to restore order. Apparently, she was so pissed off.
She's hitting him with his iPhone.
She was beating the guy with his own iPhone, wouldn't listen to the flight crew to calm down, and so that they had to divert the flight and do an emergency landing in India. Now, the weird thing about this is there will be no charges against her. Okay. No, I get that. But at the very least, what you're supposed to do is fine the people for doing this. There should be a financial penalty for you diverting not just the flight, but all these people. It's going to cost the airline X number of dollars to have to land in a different airport. They should have to pay something.
I agree.
But they're going to let him go scot. They got on the next flight and went off to Indonesia. I'd be willing to bet in separate seats.
Oh, yeah. But he could lay charges.
You know what? If you're cheating on your wife and she finds out, you don't lay charges. That's something that wouldn't be cool. That would not be cool to do. But this is, in a joking way, shows that Touch ID is better. Face ID is better than Touch. Now, you said, why didn't she?
What did I say? Why didn't she? Oh, well, I did. I said, why didn't she? Well, because.
No, finish the sentence. Why didn't she?
Why didn't she hold it up to his face and it wouldn't have worked? Because
the way Face ID, and this is something that people may not be understanding, the way Face ID works is that your eyes have to be open. You can be wearing a hat or glasses or a beard or no beard, but it has to see your eyes in order for it to work properly. There was actually, as much as I hate to admit it, and he knows I hate to admit it, just trying to find it now, how the iPhone works on The Verge. Neelay Patel, who is a guy well known to anyone who, well, never mind. I was going to be mean. I'm not being mean. But check out this video. So the way make sure my audio. Yeah. So the way it's working is that it's that little notch has got an infrared light, an infrared camera, and a dot creator. So when you hold it up to your face, the infrared light comes on. The dot projector starts flashes, puts these 30,000 dots on your face. The infrared camera takes a picture of those dots on your face, then compares it to the mathematical picture it has on the phone, and if those two match to a certain degree, then the phone unlocks. And it does all of that in a fraction of a second. That's really remarkable when you look at it from that point of view, how fast Apple is getting this stuff done. It's really, really interesting how quickly this information is being sent through the various systems of the phone in order to get this stuff to work. Because all the video, all the demonstrations I've seen, and the conversation I've had with people with Face ID is that it is remarkably quick. It's from face down to in front of your face, and it's already on and open. So it's not a matter of picking up your phone, staring at it for X period of time, and then swiping up. It's if you pick your phone up, as you're swiping up, it's doing all this stuff, and your phone's unlocked by the time it gets in front of your face. Now, the downside of that is you still got to pick your phone up.
What about in the night?
Well, the night's even better because it's infrared.
That's right.
Infrared works better at night. It's actually, you'd have more of an issue in the bright daytime. If the sun was over your shoulder and the sun was on the infrared camera directly, you might have a bit of an issue. So you'd have to turn yourself around or angle the camera in a different way. So it actually works better at night than it would in the daytime. Again, the downside is Touch ID. I can have my phone down here and turn on Touch ID, and my phone is now unlocked. I didn't look at it. I didn't have to give it any kind of attention. I didn't have to do anything. I can be looking at you and do it, and then look at the phone. So that's not necessarily a reason against Face ID, but Touch ID is slightly more convenient in that situation. But for the most part, with the way we use our phones, we pick the phones up, we tap the button, we do Touch ID while we're looking at the phone, and then it unlocks. So Face ID will do that, but it'll do it actually faster. Which I think is fascinating. Really interesting.
Well, one of my friends said, why is it necessary at all?
And we'll get to that. We'll absolutely get to that. ArcSign says, is Face ID like Touch ID in that it will require the passcode after a certain period or after restarts? Yes, it does. I don't know about the period thing, which I find really freaking annoying, but definitely after restarts. Very much like Touch ID. When you reboot your computer, you'll have to use Touch ID you have to use your passcode in order to get into the phone. Also, you'll have to use your passcode if Face ID fails either a certain number of times in a row or in a certain way, and Apple's not telling you how that certain way is. So you might be looking at it and Face ID isn't working. It's a use your passcode and you just type in your passcode. And again, the other thing is you don't have to use Face ID. This thing seems to be another thing that people have a misconception about. Just like Touch ID, you don't have to use Touch ID if you don't want to. You don't have to use Face ID if you don't want to either.
No.
So if you have concerns about it, just don't use it. Although, if you have concerns about it, then don't buy an iPhone 10.
Well, I was going to say, you're paying for it, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. You're paying for it. So later on in our starting point photography segment, we're talking about beginning photo editing, how to get started with that mass of photos that you might have on your camera or on your computer. We'll do the beginning bits of that, how to manage that first. In our next week's show, we'll do some more editing tips. Later on the show, Melissa has got Face ID questions, but up next we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple. Let's try that again. We're going to talk to a good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com about Apple taxes and his iPhone 10 update. All that and much more coming up. This is Your Mac Life.
Your Mac Life.
Welcome back, folks. Thank you guys very much for joining me here on this Wednesday evening. In our phone now, we've got our good friend Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com coming to you live from a hobo bar. Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. You're actually, it's not really a hobo bar, is it?
Well, no. Well, sort of. No real bar would let me in. So,
It's got to be at least a bar that accepts hobos.
Right.
That makes sense.
So,
That's fair.
you can make your own choice. Although my friend is here. He's a chiropractor, and he's here, and I feel bad for him tonight because he broke his tooth today. So he's sitting at the bar drinking as much Jameson as they'll feed him. Because he can't get in to see his dentist until Friday.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, so he's just he's self-medicating. So me and a friend are offering our help because I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express once. So I said I'm the closest thing you have to a doctor. So we thought about Gorilla Glue. All kinds of good stuff.
Sure.
Well, we'll have them fixed up in no time.
I think the Gorilla Glue thing will actually work, wouldn't it?
Well, it led to a big discussion about Gorilla Glue versus Super Glue, and he was just staring at us like, "Oh my God!" It sounds like you guys are serious.
Yeah, really.
And we are. I mean,
It's not you. So what do you care?
I don't care.
Yeah, I'd make the same suggestions. You've posted a follow-up iPhone 10 follow-up thoughts over on the Loop at loopinsight.com. You said the first thing I'd like to address that some people are saying you have to relearn how to use the iPhone if you buy an iPhone 10. That just seemed to me to be ridiculous.
Shawn?
What?
Shawn?
Jim?
Where did you go?
Oh, jeez. See, we can hear you, but you can't hear us. Jim?
There, now I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. For some reason, that cut out. It just seemed ridiculous that supposed intelligent, and I'm making assumptions, tech reviewers would think that you'd have to relearn the damn phone. If you watch Apple's videos, you can see that there's a couple of minor things that you've got to relearn, but it's not the whole new interface.
Well, I thought a lot about what these people were saying that you had to relearn the phone.
Yeah.
So much so that when I went to some friends and showed them the phone after it was released, they said, "Oh, I heard I had to relearn everything. I don't like that." And I unlocked it and said, "Go ahead, move around, do what you want." They said, I didn't give them any prodding or anything. They said, "Well, this is exactly the same as mine."
Yeah.
You're right. It is. And when I showed them, okay, they said, "Well, what are people talking about then?" I said, "Okay, here's what they're talking about." So instead of going to the home button to, scroll back to the first page,
Yep.
you just swipe up.
Yep.
So swipe up is like a replacement for your home button, basically. There are some things that are different, like Siri, you press the side button. There's a couple of things that you have to relearn, but you don't have to relearn the phone. And the last time that we talked about this, I mentioned that the home button really wasn't a problem for me after a little time using it. It's really not at all anymore. I don't even think about the home button anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm, a week and a day in, and I do not think about the home button at all anymore.
Now,
So,
do you swap back and forth between your previous iPhone, whichever that might be, and this new one?
that was an iPhone 8 Plus.
So but you're not swapping back and forth.
No, and before that it was a iPhone 7 Plus and an iPhone 6S Plus.
Yeah.
So, I don't swap back and forth. I typically use one phone and one phone only, and that's exactly what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, I think that's where some people might get into an issue of, and simply it's an issue of muscle memory. It's not relearning. It's just instead of it just remembering, oh, I'm using this phone, so I use the home button. Oh, I'm not using that phone. I have to do a different button. But relearning makes it sound like it's a whole different thing, and it's more fear, uncertainty, and doubt than anything else.
Yeah. All you're doing is changing habits.
Yeah.
So when it comes times for me to unlock the phone, no longer do I have to, put the phone up and, I'm pressing at the bottom and think, damn, there's no home button.
Yeah.
I don't do that. Now I lift up the phone. At the very same time I lift it up, I'm swiping up and it unlocks and, it's all good.
Now, you were saying on last week's show that you did have some issue with Face ID, and it seemed like, according to your updated review on the Loop, that you figured the issue out, which is what you said it was, just simply the placement of your eyeglasses.
Well, there's a couple of issues that are going on, and again, I know it's habit now, because as I'm not hyper aware of what I'm doing when I pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Now it's that muscle memory thing where I pick up the phone, swipe up, and it unlocks, and I'm all good, whether I have my glasses on or not. So it's two things. One, yes, I'm positive that my glasses, the rim on my glasses were blocking my eyes just because of where I wear them. So that's one. The second thing is the angle. So think about when you unlock your iPhone sometimes with Touch ID. Sometimes the phone is like horizontal to your body.
Yes.
So my camera was looking at the sky. It was looking above my head.
Yep.
So, of course, there's no way it's going to unlock. So I think that was another problem, was the actual angle of the placement of the phone when I lifted it up. Once I solved that, the glasses weren't even a problem, because the camera on the phone, Face ID, could still see my eyes, nose, and mouth.
Yeah.
So it just kind of solved itself over the past week. So yes, it was my fault, really. I mean, if you want to place blame, because first I was so used to having Touch ID that I would Touch ID with the phone horizontal while the camera's looking up in the sky. And second, if you get the angle right, and that's just a matter of muscle memory of picking the phone up and actually looking at the phone. And, the third thing that I mentioned in there was that it could be attention aware, because you have to be actually looking at the phone in order for that to unlock.
Yep.
I'm not sure if that was as big of an issue. I'm not really sure about that, but it could have been, because I just wasn't used to it. But again, now that the habits have changed, every time it just unlocks.
Yep. Now, Arcsign in the RC chat room, speaking of attention aware, he says, ask Jim if he's noticed any annoyance with the attention setting that dims the screen when he isn't looking at the phone.
No, it's actually a good thing.
Yeah.
At least I think, because before I would be reading a story on the phone, and the screen may dim. Where now it won't, because it knows that it has my attention. And obviously you can read, however many words are on the screen faster than it would dim, but you can look up and talk to somebody and, address a question or whatever is going on, and then look back at the screen, and it's still not going to dim, because the phone knows that it has your attention.
Yeah.
I did this once, although it was the day of the lifted embargo. I get up at like 2 a.m. And if you set your alarm and just reach over and press snooze, then the alarm sound will continue to be loud. But if you if you sit up in bed, which is what I did, and then looked at the phone, the alarm sound will dim.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I think it's a bad UI.
Because it knows that it has your attention. So I was already sitting up at that point, you know? It knew that it had my attention, and the alarm sound will dim. So, you know, because I don't want to wake up, you know, Bob the hobo across the bridge.
But isn't hitting the snooze button enough to tell it that it's got your attention?
No. I'm just saying if you look at it, the actual loudness of the chime will dim.
Okay.
So it knows that it has your attention, and presumably you're up. Yeah. So I rolled out of bed, looked at the phone, and the sound dimmed, and then I pressed stop and get up.
Okay, got it.
Right?
I think the single most interesting thing to me is I have yet to actually touch and hold an iPhone 10, but the idea of the screen size fascinates me. I'm glad you brought it up in your update. It's a really weird, it's almost like the iPhone 10's a TARDIS. It's smaller than the iPhone Plus, but it has more screen real estate.
Right.
It's kind of a really weird idea because of the bezel and the almost edge-to-edge screen on it. But the screen is narrower than on the iPhone 8 Plus. Is that any kind of a concern or annoyance for you that the phone is physically narrower than the 8 Plus or smaller or anything along those lines?
This is one of the weirdest situations that I found myself in a review in a long time, because the actual phone is smaller.
Yes.
So the physical form factor is smaller than what I came from, but I feel like I have more room to work with because the whole face of the phone is screen.
Yeah.
So the fact that it may be narrower isn't factoring into my perception of the iPhone 10, because it feels like that I have even more room, even more space. So if I was going back and forth and, you know, saying, oh, well, I can fit this in here and this in, no, I have to jack the font size up and everything just so I can see any phone. So it got to the point where I even had to do it on my 15-inch MacBook. So, I'm not seeing more than 5 words of screen now anyway.
Yeah, the best of times. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I know that feeling.
So, it's the best way to think about it, I think, is what I wrote in the story, that it's closer to the form factor of the iPhone 8, but the screen is closer to the form factor of the 8 Plus. So you kind of have the best of both worlds with this device. And it's kind of weird when you think about it in that way. Well, it's got a big screen, but it's a smaller form factor. So I actually freaked out over the weekend because I thought I didn't have my phone with me, but it was in my pocket.
Yeah.
Because I'm used to carrying a plus size phone.
Yeah.
And that's not what I have. I have an 8 size phone.
Yeah.
So, but when you're looking at the screen, it feels very roomy, very big.
Do you find yourself invoking the screen because you're grabbing it and your fingers are touching the screen? That's what I was worried about, was as you were holding it in one hand, that your thumb would wrap around and touch the screen, or your fingers would touch the screen and the screen wouldn't work. You know what I mean?
No, I don't think that's happened. I mean, I've touched the screen just to look to see what's there. You know what's funny? I had the phone on the counter today, and I touched the screen to see what the battery percentage was, and it said it was looking for Face ID.
Yep.
So I had to stick my face in there, because then I wanted to see what the messages said.
Yeah.
So I stuck my face under the cupboards and, in front of the phone so that it would recognize me. But that was kind of funny. But
Arcsign says, Shawn, ask Jim if you prefer a metal back rather than wireless charging, just for durability, rather than glass for wireless charging. I guess it's which trade-off are you willing to do, wireless charging and glass or metal back and wired charging?
Okay, so there's a couple of things. That's a good question because there's a couple of things that go into this for me. I don't use a case ever.
Yeah.
Never have. I just don't like them. So I don't have a case on any phone that I've owned, with the exception of one, which was probably a 5, and I had a Mophie case, and I only used that when I traveled. So not using a case is one thing. I don't mind the feel of the glass, so it's not a big deal for me. Here's the thing about wireless charging. And I don't use wireless charging as much as I probably should, simply because it doesn't work as fast as what I would like.
Yeah.
So tonight, before I came to the Hobo Bar, I thought I should charge my phone. And I had like 30 minutes, or maybe not even that, maybe 20 minutes. So am I going to go wireless charging? I get like 2 or 3% out of that. No, I went with my fast charger, plugged into the wall, and just plugged it in and went, and charged it right up. It didn't fill it by any means, but it gave it a good charge. So, that to me is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's instant gratification or what, but so wireless charging is very convenient. If you have it sitting at your desk, you just drop your phone down and it charges, and it's always charging and everything is good.
Yeah.
And if that's what you do, then yeah, wireless charging is great. That's just not how I work. I do use it, but not like that, because I'm more the type that will let the phone go down and then realize I have to go with 20 minutes before I have to go, and then plug it in and want a fast charge.
That's right. Me too. That being the case, I have heard from a lot of reviewers and a lot of people I've talked to, the glass makes the iPhone less slippy than previous metal-backed ones. Glass has got a better tactile sensation than metal, and for me, that's important. I was just saying in the IRC chat room, my iPhone 6 is the only iPhone I've ever had a case on all the time, because it's so big, it feels very, very slippery in my hands. I'm looking forward to feeling the glass of the iPhone 10, because people have been saying that it feels a little more, not tacky, but it certainly feels like it's less slippery than the metal on the bigger iPhones.
I must have like frog fingers or something, because I didn't feel any of them very slippery.
Interesting.
The iPhone 8 was not very slippery for me. The iPhone 7, I had a couple of different versions of the 7. These are all plus versions. I had the red. I had a regular rose gold. And the 8, I had the gold, rose gold hybrid thing, which I really liked, by the way. And now the glass, and I don't find any of them very slippery. As a matter of fact, I'm rubbing the back of the iPhone 10 right now as we talk, and it's not slippery at all. I mean, my finger, it pulls on the back of the screen, so it's not slippery.
Interesting.
It looks shiny, but it's not slippery.
Speaking of slippery, those idiots at CNET did what they called a drop test on the iPhone, and somehow they seemed surprised that the glass broke. Are these tests, do they have any value at all for the average person, or are these just internet circle jerks by tech websites?
They have no, it doesn't do anything for me. I mean, if I went home and dropped my favorite mug on the ground, it's probably going to break. It may not, but it probably will. That's why I don't drop my favorite mug on the ground.
Yeah.
And if people want to do that, then they can. Have you ever seen somebody drop something glass, whether it's a phone or a glass at a bar or a glass at home, and not go,
Yeah, that's right.
because it's glass, and
Exactly.
they know it's gonna break.
Yep.
And if it doesn't break, you just saved yourself some money because it didn't break.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter how much money. If it's a glass and it's $5 or $2, then you saved yourself $2 because the glass didn't break.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean anything to me. People are going to drop their phones and they're going to break, or some people are going to drop their phones and it's not going to break.
Yeah.
I mean, what difference does that kind of a test make? And I don't care if we're talking about Apple or Samsung or Motorola or whatever. I just don't see the sense in that kind of a test. It's glass.
I think part of the problem, though, is maybe they're taking Apple's marketing too seriously. Apple says it's the strongest glass ever. Yeah, I believe them when they say that, but it's still glass.
Yeah.
It's not. Apple does not say it's unbreakable glass. Apple does not say it's stronger than steel. Apple does not give you any indication that if you drop this, it won't break.
Yeah. I'm thinking tomorrow as a test, I should take a nail and see if I can hammer it through the iPhone. I don't get these kind of tests.
Yep.
And I'll say it again. It doesn't matter which company.
Yep.
I just don't get these kind of tests for any of them.
I would have no problem if Cena had called this our iPhone stunt. That's all it is. It's a stunt.
Well, it is. It is. And do it, but, whatever.
Yeah, don't make us think you're doing anything scientific or that you're doing something unexpected by doing these idiotic things. Speaking of idiotic things, the Paradise Papers came out over the weekend, and not only was the Queen of England found to be stashing money offshore, Apple has been Apple's been doing the same thing. Now, this has come up before. Last year, Tim Cook was hauled in front of Congress to justify Apple's, according to Congress, minuscule tax bill. And a lot of people were talking about why Apple does what they do and why they don't bring billions and billions, upwards of $200 billion in the United States. And Apple basically said, you know what, we abide by the laws of the countries that we're in. And they kind of justified it by saying, we're good corporate citizens and we're not trying to screw anybody. We're not trying to avoid paying our taxes. We're just structuring it in this way. Okay. And we all accepted that. But now these Paradise Papers have come out. And from my reading of it, it's kind of obvious Apple is intentionally avoiding paying taxes. The way they are setting up these shell companies and the way they're setting up their IP, they are no longer passively avoiding taxes. They are actively avoiding taxes. Is that a bad thing?
No.
Why not?
I would like you to show me one person in the developed world that doesn't do the exact same thing with an accountant to avoid unnecessarily paying taxes that they don't have to pay. And Apple needs to be fiscally responsible. They have a duty to the shareholders and to the company to do what it can to make the most money that it can. That's all it's doing. And again, I will say this, it doesn't matter which company. You could focus on any company in the world, and they are doing the exact same thing. Apple, according to their statement last week, is the single largest taxpayer in the world.
Yes.
So they are clearly paying their fair share. So I'm not saying that, Apple's not actively trying to reduce their tax burden. Of course. That's what they do. That's what every company does. Look at what Amazon did with, when they're going to build this new North American headquarters.
Yes.
When cities said that they wanted to be part of it, the word incentives was in the document like 20 times.
That's right.
And do you think that's incentives? Like, we'll give you a balloon?
Yeah.
No, it was tax incentives.
Yes.
It was, you move here and we will not charge you any taxes of any kind for 10 years.
Yes.
That's the kind of incentives that they're looking for. So, nobody is up in arms about that because it's the normal way that companies do business.
Yes. Except, and I completely agree with everything you're saying, and I completely understand why and how Apple does this. Not how. The how is very confusing. By the way, folks, if you're interested in this stuff, go to daringfireball.net, and Gruber's got a link to a really interesting Fortune article kind of explaining why and how this stuff is happening. Why is Apple able to pay taxes, even in the United States, at a lower rate than a lot of other people? It's a little bit of a slog to get through, but it is very interesting. The problem I have with this is the overt way Apple has been doing it with these offshore accounts on the Isle of Jersey. But Tim Cook said to the New York Times last year that Apple has a moral responsibility, and that's where he gets himself in trouble. He says Apple has a moral responsibility to not only help grow the U.S. economy, but also to contribute to the other countries we do business in.
Right.
And that's where all this bites him in the ass. Because if you believe you have a moral obligation to contribute, then you wouldn't intentionally hide your money in places around the world.
Whoa. He didn't say we have a moral responsibility to pay more than what we should. He said we have a moral responsibility to pay what we owe.
Yes.
And they are paying what they owe in every single country that they do business in. Should Apple go to Ireland and say, what kind of a deal can you give us if we put a factory in Cork and make a European headquarters here? What can you do for us? And Ireland says, well, we can do this. And they say, well, that sounds great. Let's do it. Now, when Apple goes to Austria or Germany or another country and says, we're kind of thinking that we would like to set up something here. Is there anything that you can do for us? And they say, nah, nothing we can do. Okay, well, let's try Switzerland or France and let's see what they can do. Do you think Facebook and Google and everybody else doesn't do the exact same thing? Of course they do.
Just because they're doing it doesn't mean it's okay.
It is okay because it's legal. If they closed those loopholes or rules or whatever they are, then Apple wouldn't do it.
Yes.
What they're doing is not illegal.
Yes, I
and
agree.
That's what some people are trying to get you to believe,
yes.
that what Apple and Amazon and Google and Facebook, what they're doing is illegal and immoral. It's not. Apple is paying every single penny that it should. Now, is it wrong? Well, that's up to the individual. Personally, I don't think it's wrong.
Like I said, the issue for me was Tim Cook trying to take the moral high ground on this. I think that's where he stepped into a big pile of poo. Is if he hadn't said that, then we wouldn't expect morality out of this corporation.
No, I don't think that Apple, or I'll take a leap here and say any of the others, are illegally hiding money that they should pay taxes on. Now, the fact that Tim would be, or Apple would be taxed at like 30% to bring their money back to the States is not Apple's fault.
Agreed.
That's the U.S. government's fault. So, don't blame Apple for not wanting to bring back, say, $200 billion and be taxed at 30%. Why would any fiscally responsible company do that? They wouldn't. And Apple isn't. So, the hubbub that comes from this stuff, and it's funny because Dave, Mark, and I today were texting about this because Dave sent me the open letter thing.
Yes.
that from the German guy.
Yep.
I fundamentally do not agree with what he said in that letter. I do not agree. And I wrote Dave back and said, I don't agree with him.
Yep.
I really don't agree with him. So I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I mean, I said last week when I posted the tax information thing that, there's been so much misinformation that Apple felt the need to post this. And people were emailing me and they were tweeting me and saying all this stuff.
Yep.
I can't help that I don't agree that Apple should pay more than what it can legally pay.
I agree.
I think that any fiscally responsible company or person is going to look for that. And if you ask anybody, I bet you if I asked the people that wrote me, and I didn't, but I bet you if I asked them, do you have an accountant? They say yes. Then you personally are as bad as Apple at what you're saying. Because that accountant is not saying, well, I could write this off, but I won't. It's perfectly legal to write off, but I won't. I'll make you pay the taxes on that.
But that accountant, and this is where the difference comes with these corporations who can afford these lawyers. Your accountant isn't saying, hey, if you incorporate in this other country, you'll pay less taxes. Your accountant isn't saying that. Your accountant at Apple can say that. Hey, if you want to avoid paying these taxes in Germany, then all you have to do is incorporate in Jersey. So that's the issue that people are saying. It's not that Apple isn't paying their fair share of taxes. They certainly are. But they are actively trying to avoid paying taxes in Germany, in France, in Switzerland by doing these sort of tax dodges, legal tax dodges, and incorporating and doing things in Jersey. If they wanted to pay their fair share, they'd pay it in Germany.
No, and simply by having an accountant or going online to see what your legal write-offs are, even if you didn't know that you're having, you're doing the exact same thing as an individual.
I agree.
We all do it. So I do not agree at all in any level that Apple is doing anything wrong, nor is Google or Facebook or Amazon or Samsung or the guy down the street.
Yep. And again,
they're all doing the same thing on a different level. I mean, the guy down the street that his accountant said, if you had an LLC, because of the work that you do, if you had an LLC, you could write off part of your home and part of your car. So the guy sets up an LLC. Isn't he doing the exact same thing on a smaller scale, but the exact same thing? And of course that's what you're going to do.
And remember, this is happening, and I didn't realize this. I read the Fortune article. This is happening because the way the American tax code works, it actually forces companies to leave that money overseas, because if they don't, it's going to get double taxed when they bring it back here in the United States. So if the issue is less so much about Apple avoiding tax, although that's part of what they're doing, the bigger issue is the American tax code is so screwed up that companies are forced to do these kinds of things.
I think it's important for people to realize that Apple has never been accused of not paying taxes in the countries that it operates. And the full tax burden that they owe, they pay, including the U.S. They're the largest taxpayer in the world. And I'm not, this isn't about Apple. This is about the countries and their taxation. So as I just explained, I fundamentally do not see a difference between Apple and the individual person looking to lower their tax burden as legally as they can do, besides the scale of it.
Yep.
You may make $100,000 a year. You're looking for ways for your accountant or your H&R Block or filling out your forms, you're looking for ways to save a couple $100
Yep.
On your taxes. Well, Apple is doing the exact same things, except it's looking to save a few $billion on its taxes. And if you at all go and search out how to save money on your taxes, you cannot fundamentally be angry at Apple for trying to do the same thing.
I know it's not going to apply to you living there under the bridge, but we haven't had a chance to talk about this. A few weeks ago, Amazon announced a program where they would basically get a key to your front door in order to deliver packages inside your home. If you had a home, would you do this?
Well, I have a shopping cart, so, I mean, I'm not giving them my shopping cart. No. No, I have some canned goods in there. I mean, that's my life right now.
Now, somebody made an interesting point. After Amazon bought Whole Foods a few months ago, this is, I think, a small step to not only Amazon putting packages inside your front door, but putting your groceries away for you.
Well, it could be in your fridge.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a far-fetched idea. Once you accept the idea of an Amazon guy opening up your door and you trust Amazon, and I sure as hell wouldn't, but if you trust Amazon to open your door and put a package in, why wouldn't you trust the Whole Foods guy to come into your house and put your frozen chicken in the freezer?
So here's the thing. I have noticed in California, in the Bay Area, that people here are willing to give up a lot for convenience.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They say, "Oh, I work a lot and I just want stuff done for me. So if I can pay somebody to do it, then they'll do it." I bet you here that will work.
Yep.
Because people want to come home and they will see in their fridge there's some chicken and some vegetables and all of this other stuff that they've ordered, and Amazon came in and delivered it. They're willing to pay for that. That's why Google Express is so popular here. If you talk to anybody down here about Google Express, they're just in love with it because they're at the office, they order whatever they want, and then all of a sudden it's done. You know, it's at their door. So that may also work. I'm willing to bet it would.
I think that's the key. It's how much are you willing to give up for that convenience? Because I don't believe that Amazon thinks this is a real issue. People get stuff stolen off their front porch all the time, but I don't think it's a huge issue. I think Amazon is using this as a literal foot in the door to start delivering groceries into your house, because there are easier solutions than this. If Amazon wanted to, they would sell or rent you a box with a lock on it that you'd put on your front porch, and the Amazon guy would just unlock it with the Amazon key and drop your stuff in there. He doesn't have to come into your house. You don't got to monitor the house.
It would be like a personalized Amazon locker.
Exactly. It'd just be at your front step, and it could be anywhere. It could be locked down on your front sidewalk. So I think this is a Amazon solution looking for a problem that doesn't exist. But Amazon is getting people used to the idea of someone opening up your front door to walk into your home and put away your groceries.
It may not exist in all places. It could actually exist here. It's the craziest thing here. It really is.
Well, as Arxine points out, the milkman used to deliver milk right into the kitchen. I remember when I was a kid, you'd wake up on those Thursday mornings and there'd be milk on the kitchen floor next to the kitchen door because the milkman came in at 4 a.m. and put the milk down.
And then so many babies were born that the milkman stopped doing it.
And on that happy note, we'll let him go. Jim, thanks very much for joining me, buddy. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Shawn.
Thanks, man. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, maybe that's why they stopped doing it. I mean, who knows? Who knows why they stopped doing these things? That could have been it. So yeah, maybe that's the reason why they stopped. But I remember as a kid, there was milk delivery, and we still had. I remember some of my friends' houses had a little door window type thing that was locked on their side, and the milkman would unlock it from his side, put the milk in, and then you'd open it up. But I remember the milkman actually delivering stuff to our door, and then some place we lived, delivering stuff into the house. Did you ever have milk delivery at home when you were a kid? Yes. Into the microphone. Turn your microphone on.
Yes, I had a milkman. We had a milkman.
Really?
We did.
And so did it deliver all kinds of milk? Like I remember getting cream for coffee, chocolate milk, and all butter. Basically all the dairy products.
I just remember milk. Yeah. We didn't drink coffee. We drank tea.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Sorry. Well, you had to put something in your tea.
Milk.
So, FaceID.
Yes.
You and friends of yours had questions about FaceID. So let's see what we can talk about when it comes to FaceID.
All right.
You have notes and everything?
No. I'm checking the thingy.
Oh, the thingy.
I'm disconnected anyway. I'm disconnected, everyone.
Oh, you should be able to once you. There you go. You're back.
Oh, I'm back.
You're back.
Yes. Oh.
This is your segment, lady.
Oh.
Take it away.
Well, I don't think it's unusual. Some of the questions or concerns that I have that I expressed to you.
Well, express them to the audience. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Okay, I expressed my concern about where my facial map was going to go and wondering what Apple or their, I guess, partners in apps could do with the map of my face. And if my face could be used or put in a database and used for who knows what, for me to walk around in the community and for an ad to pop up in front of me.
And those are all legitimate concerns. And it's a shame that either A, Apple, B, the media, or C, the consumer themselves haven't gone and found out the answers to it. Because the answers to this stuff are there. The first thing is when, I think the problem is because of the description that both Apple and the media do. The Face ID on your phone isn't actually taking a picture of your face. As we saw in the video from The Verge, it's doing a 3D map of the contours of your face. So at no point is an actual picture, recognizable picture, being taken of you. All right? So if you could look at the IR image, you would not see a picture of yourself. You'd see a bunch of dots.
Yes.
Then that picture is encrypted on your phone and hidden away in this thing that Apple calls the secure enclave. And it's a little chip on your phone that scrambles the information so no one else can get it. And it never leaves the phone. Okay, this is the same as your fingerprint ID on the Touch ID system. This is why the FBI couldn't hack the phone, because they couldn't get the fingerprint information off the phone. So that information is on the phone, and Apple will not allow anyone else to access that security enclave. So other developers can't get that 3D encrypted map of your face. Apple can't even get at it. Even if Apple wanted to, Apple can't get it, because once data goes in, data is a black hole in the security enclave. Once it goes in, it doesn't come out. So at no point is Apple taking a picture of your face and sending it anywhere. Okay, does that make sense?
Well, it doesn't entirely make me feel good, but...
As Monty says, that 3D map is being converted into a mathematical sequence, encrypted, and then stored in secure enclave.
Okay.
It's never stored as a photo. It's stored as a mathematical formula.
No, that wasn't a concern. I understand that it's mapped mathematically.
So even if I gave you what the security enclave has, you can't recognize it as you.
Well, not me. But
nobody can. No, the bad guys can't look at that formula and go, "Oh, that formula looks like Melissa."
What about another computer or an app developer?
That's a very pretty, curvy formula. I think that's Melissa. And no other app developer can access that security enclave either, because Apple won't let them. When you send your app into Apple, Apple investigates the app, and they've got computers that look into your code and read your code. And if your code says, hey, let me look at the security enclave, Apple goes, no, screw you. You're not getting that. And we're not letting you release this app into the world. And very likely the developer will get their pee-pee whacked by Apple and saying, don't even try that bullshit anymore. Okay? Mm-hmm. So Apple is not... Now, Apple will allow developers to take pictures of your face because that's how camera apps work. They have to allow developers to do that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Apple will not allow developers to take pictures of you surreptitiously. So I open up Visco, a camera app, and I take a picture of flowers and trees, and then I go to check my email. Visco isn't still in the background taking pictures. Mm-hmm. It's not taking pictures of me secretively because Apple says you're not allowed to do that. If you want to take pictures on a regular basis, you have to tell the user that's what you're doing. So Visco would have to pop up and go, you mind if I take a picture right now? And you'd have to say yes. Mm-hmm. Or it'd have to be in the settings of the app where you would tell Visco, hey, every 10 minutes take a picture. It's a basically a time-lapse idea.
Okay.
Okay, so what else?
Well, I just don't think Apple's... Well, I don't know about the process of this of such technology in terms of educating the public, because people have very strange or for their own selves valid concerns. I don't know what they mean when they say a neural. What were they saying? They're using a neural network, and that's scary language. They should change their language. They should make it
Happy Fun Network.
I don't know. Neural network? That's a bit scary to me.
I understand
what does that mean? What do you mean you're taking my... Well, I'm not doing it anyways, so...
Monty says, Melissa, let's say an app developer such as 1Password wants to use FaceID or even Touch ID to secure their app data. They're allowed to ask the secure enclave, is the person requesting access permitted? The secure enclave replies back yes or no. So when I open up 1Password, one of my favorite apps on my iPhone, it says, use Touch ID to do this. So I do that, and 1Password isn't looking into the security enclave and saying, oh yeah, this fingerprint here matches up with this fingerprint there. It's just simply asking security enclave, is this the person who says, is this the person who they say, is this person who they say they are?
Right.
And the enclave goes, yes, they are, and 1Password goes, okay, I'll let him have access to the data.
Right.
And it's going to be the same thing with Face ID. Mm-hmm. So developers will have access to ask the security enclave questions, but not to get any data out of the security enclave.
Right. And that will never change.
You can never say never, but Apple's been very, very clear, unlike almost every other company, that they have no interest in your data. They don't need your data. Apple doesn't care about your data in that way, unlike Google, who, by their very nature as a company, needs data.
Right.
You're not useful to them unless you're giving them data. Mm-hmm. You're functionally useless to Google if you don't give them data. Mm-hmm. So with Facebook. Facebook needs data in order for it to be successful. Apple doesn't need data to be successful. And so they very easily can say, hey, we're the most secure company. It's because they don't need to be insecure. So they can be as private, as forceful on privacy as they want to be, because they don't ever need your data. So unless that changes, unless something happens where Apple's business plan changes and they suddenly need data, which is unlikely because they're not in that market, Apple's not going to change this, because that privacy thing is also a selling point for them too. It's also a marketing point, that if they can get that message across to people, hey, our phones are more secure. I guarantee you, and I'm saying this, I think I can say it now. A little birdie told me. Remember, was it a year ago when the FBI was having trouble hacking into the San Bernardino terrorist phone?
Yes.
A little birdie at Apple told me Apple could not have been happier about that story.
Right.
Because it was broadcast around the world that the FBI couldn't hack the iPhone. Apple would never say this publicly, but privately they were like, yes, we can't buy this kind of advertising. And Apple got to stand up and say, we care about the user. We refuse to give this data to government corporations, to government entities. We are standing up for the little guy. So Apple got a twofer. They got to be able to say we stand up for the little guy, and they got the government to admit.
They did, yeah.
The U.S. government admitted they couldn't hack the iPhone. I know, because he told me. Apple's sitting there going, yes!
Yeah.
Thank you! So Apple has built part of their company on the idea of privacy. And this is less of my Mac nature coming out and more of an honest belief. I think Apple cares more about user privacy than any other company out there. And part of it's because it's a good marketing thing. Part of it's because it's their business plan. And part of it because they just think it's the right thing to do. They shouldn't be mining you for data. Apple doesn't believe that they should do that. So Face ID, while not perfect, is a way for Apple to help you be more secure, to push technology a little bit further, and to do something cool, because it's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
But they need to do a better job of explaining to people who are afraid of this technology how this technology isn't going to affect them the way they think it's going to affect them.
Yes.
Arcsign says, Shawn, ask Melissa if... Arcsign, you know she's in the RC chat room right there with you, too. But I'll read it out for those other folks. Ask Melissa if she uses ATM bank machines and credit cards. There are a lot of things we do where our private info and images of us get captured by businesses, and we don't think twice about it. That's what I said on Twitter.
Well, no, we talked about it. I think people don't realize how many times their image is out there and being taken or by being viewed. I realize that. But it's good. This is a good conversation because then it's a whole conversation about security and your picture being taken.
People don't realize, especially those of us in large cities, well, not anymore. Especially in and we think it's in large cities in like communist countries or totalitarian dictatorships. But the most surveilled people on the world, the city with the most cameras pointed at its citizens is London, England. You go to London, and it was mind-boggling how many cameras there were on any given city block when I was there. And this was 10 years ago. It's only gotten worse. Various entities, government and otherwise, are taking your picture, again, if you live in a large city, constantly. You have no idea what they're doing with that data. You don't know how long they're keeping it for. You don't know how secure that database is. You don't know what other entities have access to that data. Does the IRS have access to your traffic data? You don't know. When the police do a search for your license plate, how long does that data stay in the police database? Where the police do a search for your license plate, and then 6 months later, someone goes, oh, yeah, he was at this point because the police searched it. You don't know how long that information sticks around. At least Apple is as upfront as they can be, and I trust them when they say, we don't want your data. Mosquito says a lot of people assume Apple's behavior will always sink to the worst level of its competition. I think that's part of the problem, is that we think, well, all the other guys are doing it. Why isn't Apple doing it? And it's because people don't understand that Apple is not those companies. Apple doesn't work the same way as Google or Facebook or Amazon, where they need your data. Apple does not need your data.
There's not a natural trust for great big corporations. So,
and especially when that corporation is now the largest corporation in the world.
Yeah.
If you've watched any sci-fi over the past 20 years, you know that's not a good thing.
Yeah, they're hiding their money all over the world, and they could be putting it more back into their own economy, but they're not. And they're all environmental, and that's all very nice, and they present very, very well. But there's still a distrust.
Yeah. And I think there's always going to be a distrust, and that distrust is good. I wish people had more of it. We distrusted our politicians as much as we distrust Apple.
Exactly. Well, I think, okay, yeah.
Because our distrust is in the wrong place. I trust Apple a hell of a lot more than I trust our government, especially the American government. I trust Tim Cook a lot more than I trust most politicians, except Justin Trudeau, because he's dreamy.
He's so dreamy.
So was there any other points your friends had that you wanted to bring up?
Oh, not really. No. I mean,
Are you sure?
no, I think one of the comments that a friend made was this whole elimination of the cash system and all this stuff. And I don't know. He was out there. I'm not quite sure what point he was trying to make.
Apple certainly is trying to do that too. I mean, that's what Apple Pay is about. But they're trying to eliminate cash not because of any nefarious reasons. It's just more convenient to have your bank on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
And if your phone is secure, you can feel better about having your bank be on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
If I know I can put my credit card details on my phone and no one can get those details, I feel a lot safer. And I'd be willing to leave my credit card at home. Cash is dirty, it's inconvenient, it's expensive because it costs money to make and maintain.
Mm-hmm.
Most people who don't like cash are those who are just naturally suspicious, paranoid, or want to work in a cash-based society for any number of reasons, whether that's avoiding taxes or distrust of governments or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, it's avoiding taxes. Most people who want to pay by cash, tradesmen are a perfect example, artists, they're at a very, very low level. They're trying to avoid paying taxes. Mm-hmm. You know, you buy a painting for someone and it's $200, and if you give him a credit card, he has to have a banking system set up. He has to give X amount of money to the credit card company. The government can then track and say, "Hey, where's this $200 coming from?" Whereas you just give him $200, that goes right into his pocket. All of it goes into his pocket, and so you're avoiding taxes. And that happens at a very low level. Yes. It costs us money. It hurts all of us. But we kind of look the other way. So that's not the reason why Apple is doing Apple Pay.
No. But these are the kinds of things that people think.
Well, what do you think? I think we're definitely going towards a cashless society.
Oh, yes.
And maybe that happens even within our lifetimes.
Yes.
Certainly within the lifetime of your son, Rory. He's 12.
Oh, yeah.
By the time he's, I'd say, in his 40s, cash won't be used anymore.
It won't. No. But then it'll also be he'll walk along the street and his face will be scanned and an advertisement will pop up that will be catering to whatever it is that he did a recent search for or whatever. It's just scary.
Yes, but that's where we also need to be vigilant, and unfortunately people aren't, about keeping an eye on that sort of thing, where you have to make sure that the people in charge of those regulations and those laws, and fortunately this is not the case because most of them are old white guys, you have to make sure those people are tech savvy enough to know these things are bad. I have no problem with, and I've seen it in action in various places, so you walk down the street and there's a bus stop there, and it's one of those little bus shelters. On the back of it is an ad. Well, I've seen now there are videos on those things. Well, it's not a big stretch to think that there could be a camera in there that would see my face and go, "Oh, that's Shawn. He was just down the street at the pizza place, but he didn't buy a pizza. So maybe I'll offer him a hamburger at the place up the street." And so you walk on the street and this ad pops up. The problem is those ads aren't really cost effective if it's targeted at Shawn, because I'm walking on the street and there's 15 other people around me. So I don't think those ads will be really, really popular. I think the ads the other way around, where your phone will beep and everyone gets this message, "Hey, if you stop in at Subway up the street, we'll give you a 10% discount." But those should always be opt-in.
So you are saying, I'll go for those
Exactly.
ads that are going to tell me
That's
there's
right.
a free Coke up the street.
That's right. Whereas, I want to be able to turn off that functionality on my phone, so don't bother me. Or I want to turn it off because I want to get a deal. There's been many times where I've been in Vancouver and been downtown and I wonder what restaurant is around here. You know what? I'll do a search on Groupon. And I'll bring up my Groupon app, and Groupon will tell me what restaurants in the general area of me are having Groupon sales. And I'll pick one and I'll get a sale. That's good. I like that. But that's me making that choice, not the advertisers throwing ads at you. But that's where we need to have our elected representatives making sure that these sorts of intrusive things are kept at a minimum and kept voluntary too. So that I choose, I'll go to the subway.com website and sign in, and I'll get a free sub for signing in. And then when I go past those ads and the subway thing pops up, I go, oh, okay. And there should also be a button there where it says, don't bother me again for another day. I'm not in the mood for sub. I don't want to have that ad pop up every single day I walk by.
Right.
So don't bother. I have Subway once a week. So don't tell me again in 2 weeks. There's all kinds of ways of doing it. But we have to be, as citizens and as politicians and as regulators, have to be on top of these things. Don't just let the corporations run willy-nilly, because they will go nuts with this shit.
Well, therefore, there's no problem with Apple being under scrutiny about this. It's
No,
a good thing.
not at all.
I mean, there was some senator that, asked Apple all sorts of questions.
Yep, and that's
right?
what they're supposed to do.
That's
as
good.
long as the senators are asking the questions from points of intelligence, and that's part of the problem. Is that some of them are just idiots. But, and like I said, I don't know if you heard the segment with Jim, Apple got themselves into a bit of a piddle because they said they had a moral responsibility to contribute.
Well, they do.
They don't, though. If you are actively taking money out of Germany and putting it into Jersey, you're not contributing to Germany.
Yeah, no, you're not.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, I thought you meant they do have a moral obligation to contribute.
Even if they don't, even if you don't believe they don't, that's what Tim Cook said, that he feels Apple has a moral obligation to contribute.
Yes.
And once you say that, when you put yourself on that pedestal, you can't start stashing money other places.
No, exactly. We had a big conversation about this kind of thing this morning.
Yeah. Mosquito. I think my vote is clear. Melissa stays, Shawn goes. Well, talk about editing. I've said 1,000 times to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of students, in photography, half the beauty of your image, half the impact of your image is going to come from editing. Very, very, very rarely will you ever pick up a camera, take a picture, and have that picture be perfect out of the camera. That is a fluke. Trust me, if that happens. It's happened to me on occasion, but very, very rarely. So what you got to do is you got to learn to edit. And you got to learn to edit every shot. Whether you're posting it on Instagram and using filters, whether you're posting it on Twitter and using Snapseed, or whether you are posting it to Flickr or to a photo contest, or you want to print it off, every photo needs some kind of editing. The problem is, as beginners, we tend to, I've seen this happen all the time with beginners, and I ask them, how many images are on your camera card right now? And more than half of the beginners say, oh, there's pictures on there from a couple of months ago. Well, no, you got to get them off the camera. You can't edit them on the camera. The screen in the back of your camera isn't big enough to edit on. So don't even try. So the first thing I always do, and the first thing I tell students to do, is when you come back from your photo shoot, whether that's that day or whether that's that weekend or whether that's after your vacation, the first thing you want to do is take the camera card, the card with the pictures on it, and you want to immediately duplicate this. You want to back this up. Because something happens if this card is in this camera and that card goes bad, or if this camera gets stolen, or it gets lost in a fire, you've lost those images. So that's the first thing you want to do, is you want to grab the photos off the card and put them somewhere else, preferably on your computer, on your computer's hard drive. So the first thing I do, and I'll show you here. Yes, you can. Just a second now. Just hang in there, young lady. So the first thing I do is I open up the folder. I'm going to cover up your face here for a second. Just a second. I'll show the audience this. So the first thing I do is I open up the folder that's got the photos on it. So this is my Nikon D600, and there's the folder with the photos that I took. So there's 232 images. Let me get rid of the. Why is that there? Go away. So there's 232 images on this card right now. So the next thing I do is I go to my desktop and I create a folder with the name of the event. So for me, 2017, 10 Davis Bay. So that's October, Davis Bay. So I know I can always find these later. All I got to do is know, where was I? Oh, I was at Davis Bay. Is that where we were shooting these? Davis Bay? Okay, good. Got the name right. So next thing I do is I take those pictures from the card, and I just dump them all into that folder. 232 photos are now going to be dumped into 200, 6.47 gigabytes. It'll take a couple minutes. So that's the first thing I do when I come home. So then I know I've got those same 232 photos on the camera card, and then they're backed up to at least my hard drive on my computer. Now, the way I've got it set up is that as soon as I get them on my hard drive, I then back them up to a external drive. Where's my external drive? So I also dump them later on tonight. I'll dump them onto an external hard drive. So now I've got 3 copies of these photos on the camera card, on the desktop of the computer, and then on an external drive. Then I open up my photo editing app of choice. And for me, it's Lightroom. So open up Lightroom, and this is the window that you see when you open up Lightroom with what's called a new catalog. This is a brand new catalog. So I tell Lightroom I want to name the catalog. And I'm going to give the catalog the same name as the folder. 2017 10 Davis Bay. Okay? And then I'll save that. I'll save that folder. So you see, here it is here. It's in this folder where the photos are going. It's right there. So in there is the catalog for the Lightroom settings. So I keep the Lightroom catalog and the images in the same place. That way I can find them all fairly quickly. So this is why you've got to be fairly organized and do it right then. You can't wait until 6 weeks later. You can't wait and go, oh, what was that card? Where was that information? It's the easiest thing in the world to do it as soon as you get home or the first thing the next morning. When we were in Mexico, I would do this in the morning when we get up and we're showering and getting ready for our day. When I travel, I try to do it when I get home. When we're at Macworld Expos, I do it in the morning while I'm having coffee or breakfast. Just getting these things done as backups, getting a backup done as soon as I possibly can. By the way, Melissa, if there are any questions in the IRC chat room, could you forward them on to me just because I can't read it at the same time? So here we are. Here I've got my Lightroom window. And it says click import button to begin. The import button is down here in the lower right-hand side. So you see down here it says import. But I don't do that. I don't use the import button. What I do is I go back to that folder that's got all the photos on it. And I simply Command A, uncheck the Davis Bay one, and then I just drag and drop them into my Lightroom window. So there's all the photos that were on that card. So these are from the day before. So I'm going to uncheck them all. And then I'm going to select all the photos that I took of the lovely, lovely Melissa. And the sunset and all the experimental shots I did. I click the check button. So now all of those photos are lit up and checked. And then I go on, for some bizarre reason, Lightroom has moved that one from the lower left to the lower right. I click on the import button, and then I let Lightroom start importing. And you can see it's importing very, very quickly. Okay? So, even before the import's finished, I can go to the first photo. I look at the first photo, and I make a decision right then and there. And this is where you've got to get brutal. Brutal. And what does Shawn know? What program?
Oh, Monty just said he
Microphone.
Oh, Monty said he uses a program that renames all of his photos year, month, day. I guess it's hour, minute, second.
Sure, you can do that. What's the program called?
Monty doesn't say. EXIF, EXIF Renamer.
Renamer? Okay, I'll check it out. So this is where you've got to get really, really brutal when it comes to your photos. You've got to look at your... What?
That was MacMan. Sorry.
Okay, it's okay. You got to look at the photos and with experience, know over time, can I fix this photo? Is this photo worth keeping or not? And for me, so this is all in my Lightroom collection. I want to go to hit the letter D, and that allows me to get to the develop module for Lightroom. So here's all my develop things over here. So once I see the photo, I look at it and I think, okay, I like the sunspot up here. Not crazy with the old guy lurking in the background, but I know I can fix him. So my first thing is here in the tone button. See on the right hand side of Lightroom where it says tone and then auto. And all I do is click auto. You see the difference there? So right there, I know my composition is okay. I click auto and I realize, you know what? That's probably going to be a good photo. So I'm going to keep that photo. And using the arrow keys on my keyboard, I go to the next photo. Now, this photo, I instantly can see, if you're at the top, I've cut the sun off. Unlike the previous photo, I've got most of the sun. I've cut the sun off, so now I'm going to delete this photo. So using the keyboard commands again, I hit X. And watch what happens in the middle of the screen down around her tummy. Set as rejected. So that photo has been rejected. I go to the next one. Okay, this one's kind of cute with the little starburst overhead. I like it. Next one, don't like it, X. Next one, don't like it, X. This one's all blown out, X. And I do this for all the photos. I very quickly go through them. She got her eyes closed, X. Sun's not where I want it, X. This one might be a good photo, so this is where I go up to the auto tone again and see if it can't be recovered. Nah, there's no, that's not as good a photo as I want, so X. So you can see I've gone through 10 photos now. Make sure I got I've gone through 10 photos now. Come on. Fit. There we go. And I very quickly have gotten, there's a big old sunspot on her nose. You don't want that one. That's not a good look. That's not a good look. Not a good look. She wouldn't stop talking. You can just see the words that are coming out of her mouth as we're doing this. This was just us playing around. This was me, but she wouldn't shut up. She just kept talking and talking. And that one's, I can see that one's out of focus. Although I like the shot, it's out of focus. Mm-hmm. I like the sparkles in this one, but it's pretty bland, so I'm going to get rid of it. So all these fairly bland shots. She's falling asleep here. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. No, actually, she was taking bird shots. So I'm going through these shots. I like this one because there's a bird in the background. So let me hit the tone button and see if it can't be recovered. Yeah, I kind of like this one, so I'll keep this one. That one's half sun. Actually, that one might be okay. Nope. So I'm going to go through all 230 of these photos. Not right now today with you guys. These are obviously accidental photos. So
experimental.
Experimental photos, yeah. So then at the end of all this, I go down here to the Lightroom photo window, and it says delete rejected photos. I'm not saving these. In no way, shape, or form am I going to keep those bad photos. They're bad photos. Folks, delete bad photos. Do not keep bad photos. I guarantee you. You can look at some of those photos that I just took and oh, maybe I could fix that. No. There's no maybe you can fix this. If you're a beginner, if you don't instantly know what to do to fix that photo, don't think that in 6 months' time you'll have the knowledge to go back and fix the photo. If that's the case, if you get smarter in 6 months, retake the photo. Find the cute girl. Go back down to the beach. Take the photo again. Don't try to keep these old photos. So if you look at this up here, you go to the photo window. It says delete rejected photos. And it says delete 42 rejected master photos from disk or just remove them from Lightroom. Now, this is your choice how you want to do this. But for me, yes, I know we've got unlimited amounts of hard drive space and all that kind of stuff. But for me, delete 42 master photos from disk. Delete moves the files to the Finder's trash, removes them from Lightroom. This will also remove the synced files, if any, from any other Lightroom client. So for me, it's delete from disk. These photos are going. So those photos are now done. Never to be gotten again, although they are in the trash of the Finder. But remember, the photos, because I backed them up, they're also still on this camera. If I needed one back, they're also still on the external hard drive if I needed one back. So I've still got backups of these photos. So then the next thing I would do is I'd literally, after I went through all 232 of these photos, I'd walk away. I'd go away from the photo editing job. And I'd go do something else. Go get a coffee or go for a walk or do something else. Get away from the photos. Because what I'm going to do next is I'm going to come back to the photos and do this editing thing all over again. So let's just say, I think I saved 2 out of those 42. So let's say it's a ratio of 1 to 21. So 232. So I'll save 10 photos, maybe 20 photos out of this first batch. When I come back and look at those 20 that are left over, I guarantee you I'll get rid of 10 more of them. So now, from the 232 photos I started off with, I'm down to 10. That's a much more manageable editing project than trying to edit 232 photos. So that's your first thing to do as a beginning editor. The first thing to do is to back up your photos, get them into your editing program, and then delete the ones that are bad. If they're blurry, if the composition isn't good, if the color isn't good, the exposure isn't good, don't think you're going to fix these bad photos. Get it right in the camera, get it better in software. Don't try to fix it in software. Because if you're a beginner, you ain't that good. And you just be wasting a lot of time and get very frustrated trying to fix bad photos. MacMan says, I keep most everything I shoot. The really bad stuff gets nuked, and so stuff gets a low star rating and hidden in Aperture. See, I don't even bother with star ratings. I don't, and this is a personal thing. It's not a knock on MacMan. This is a personal thing where I say, why bother with star ratings? It's either good or it's not. I don't keep average photos. I don't keep maybe photos. You keep the good ones, delete everything else. So now, when I come back to do my next edit, I'm down to 10 photos, and I can focus on those 10 photos. And because it's a smaller number of photos to have to mess with, I can give more time to them. I generally only spend about 2 minutes on personal photos, each photo. If it's for a photo shoot or a professional shot, and I know I need to get the shot, you can spend hours on a photo. But if it's for your own personal use, it's for Flickr or Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or friends and family, 2 minutes. If you're spending more than 2 minutes in the shot, it's not a good shot. Get rid of it. Delete it. shoot it again if you have to. I'm lucky enough that we live in a beautiful area, and it's no problem for me to take the lovely Melissa back down to the beach to reshoot any of this stuff.
So when Monty says he rejects a lot of stuff in camera, remember how, because I had a tendency to do that, and then you were showing me what the editing could do if it was anyway, whatever the exposure was.
That was the problem with what Monty was doing. Or sort of that is the problem with the way Monty's doing it, his methodology. We showed, I'll find the photos. So there are photos. I think the first one was this is probably a perfectly good example. This is a photo. Let me blow this up for the audience. That on the back of your, that didn't work. I'm trying to find a bad photo. Usually it's dark photos. Let's try this one. So on the back of your camera, this would look like a too dark photo. While I like the composition, I like the sun over your head. I like the way you're tilted slightly. I like the little shimmer on the water behind you. It's too dark. So if you looked at this on the back of your camera, you'd go, oh, I'm going to delete that. It's not a good picture. But because I like the composition, I can bring it into a photo editing software. And this is not, by the way, folks, this is not specific to Lightroom. Most photo editing pieces of software can do this. I'll click on the tone button and see what happens. And look at all the detail that was recovered. Too dark. There's the tone. So now, at least now I can see a face. Now, is it good enough to want to keep editing? Maybe. Maybe not. But that's why I wouldn't have deleted this photo out of by looking at the back on the back of the camera. The other thing, it's very hard to see whether things are in focus on the back of a camera, especially those of us who are a little older and need glasses. I never look for focus on the back of my camera because I know my eyes are bad. I know I can't tell if it's in focus or not.
Yes.
I trust my camera to get it in focus, and I'll look at it on the computer screen and go, oh yeah, that's a little blurry. I'll zoom in and go, oh, it's a little blurry.
Mm-hmm.
I won't use that one. But that's why I delete very, very, unless it's really obvious on the back of the camera that, yeah, this shot is just going to be so blurry as to, or the composition is so bad. I know I don't like it. I don't delete anything off the camera while I'm on the shoot.
No, it depends on, there's some things that you would obviously reject on camera. Yeah.
Monty says, I wouldn't reject something in camera for it's too dark. I reject stuff like that's out of focus or I don't like the composition as much as I did when I shot it. Yes, that's perfect. Yes. If that's what you're doing, Monty, that's great.
Yes, right.
But yeah, don't just look at a photo, especially if it's too dark, and go, oh, it's too dark, delete.
But I'm glad Monty said that because it reminded me of when we brought photographs back and you put them in the editing program and how they changed. Yeah.
So now on next week's show, we'll talk about once you're down to those 10 shots, what are the basics of editing? What are the things that you should do with your basic editing? And these are things, like I said, once you get a procedure down, once you learn how to do this step by step by step, this takes me, if I sat down, Melissa and I go do the shoot, I come home, I sit down, I dump those photos into my desktop, onto my backup hard drive, import them into Lightroom, delete the bad ones, go away, come back, look at the leftovers, delete those bad ones. That's maybe half an hour, not including the going away part. But from beginning to end, it's about half an hour, if that, for about 200 shots. So that's not bad. And then the next day, I'll come back and look at the 10 I've got left to look at some serious edits. And those serious edits, like I said, I'll only spend maybe 2 or 3 minutes on each of those 10 images. And I'll probably delete half of those too. So let's just say I'm down to 5 images now and I'm spending 3 minutes in it. 15 minutes. That's another half hour. Spread over 2 days. So don't think editing has to be you sit down in front of your computer and I need 6 hours to do this. I can't do editing today because I've got to take the kids to school and I got to get lunches ready. No, you can do it in half an hour. Set aside half an hour to do the initial backup and editing, and the next day set up another half an hour to go through the photos and doing very basic edits. And those basic edits are what we're going to talk about on next week's show. Did that help at all? You weren't even listening, were you?
Yeah, no, but I listened when we went through it before. Yes.
It did help.
Yes, very much. Very much.
We found one of the things that we found out from Melissa's photos is that you weren't paying attention to your focusing points.
No, I wasn't.
She had a couple of really well composed shots, but because you weren't paying attention to where the focus was on the wrong thing. So she had focused on the frontmost element instead of me.
Yes.
And we discovered this thing, and if your camera can do it, you should turn it on, called focus peaking. I'd heard about it before, but I never used it on my Nikon. So I was playing around with it on the Olympus, and focus peaking is really kind of interesting. As far as I can read, it only works in manual mode. But what happens is, when you set your camera to manual mode, as soon as you start turning the manual ring, at least on this Olympus M1, it instantly zooms in to the shot. And then as your image comes into focus, a shimmery white halo will appear on the thing that's in focus. So as you stop moving the focusing ring, it zooms back out again, and you can take the picture knowing that the thing that was shimmery and white and halo-y is in focus. It's called focus peaking. See if your camera can do it. It's really interesting. And it helps folks like Melissa who just forget to pay attention to focus. Because one of the things as you're learning, there's so many things to think about.
There's so many things.
There's so many things that go into a good image that it can be overwhelming at times.
It can be a bit discouraging.
And very discouraging. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely. So I'm trying to find ways that you don't get discouraged. Folks, we're way over our time on tonight's show. That's her fault because she's so damn cute. And she had her own, you had your very first segment.
I did?
You did, the Face ID
I had
part.
a segment?
You had the Face ID part. That was your segment.
You didn't tell me that.
I know, because you would have freaked out if I told that to you.
I had a segment.
Your segment. Yay. You did good, kid.
Yes.
All right. Folks, thanks you very much for joining us. As always, I want to say big thanks to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com for joining us from the Hobo Bar. And thanks to you guys for joining us, whether you're listening live to the show on this Wednesday evening or tuned in to the archive. As always, don't forget, it's Christmas shopping season. I know. Don't get mad at me, but it's starting. If you would be so kind as to go to our website, yourmaclifeshow.com, before you do your Amazon shopping, and click on one of the things that we've got listed on the left-hand side there. When you buy anything on Amazon, not necessarily that thing, but anything you buy on Amazon in that session, we get a bit of a kickback, and that would be greatly appreciated because I need money to buy stuff. I tried to find a tactful way to say that, and I just couldn't.
For your Tiffany tin thing.
Oh, Jesus.
It's okay.
I think it's an episode of Trash Talk right there. Have you guys seen this story about Tiffany is selling tin cups for $1,000? Sterling silver tin cups for $1,000. It gets worse. They're selling paper plates, sterling silver paper plates for $1,000. They're selling sterling silver coffee cans for $1,500. This is why I hate rich people and want them all to die.
The fuck says MacMan?
It's utterly obscene.
Now that's soul whatever.
Destroying?
Destroying.
Yeah, and that I'm not going to disagree with you.
Yeah.
I'm
At least
not
an iPhone is useful.
Yeah, spending $1,000 on an iPhone I can justify, but spending $1,000 on a paper fucking plate? Are you kidding me?
Yes, I know, Monty. Why? Who are these people? Why are they wasting the planet's air?
No kidding. Monty's off to a cruise next week.
Let's enjoy, Monty.
I hope he has fun. I hate cruises. I would never go.
I'm not.
Yeah, you're the same way. You don't like cruising either. Yeah, neither of us are cruise people, but we certainly hope you have fun. That shouldn't be
Monty
but
says he always has
good.
fun.
Good to hear. Folks, as always, I've been Shawn King.
Good night, all.
3, 2, 1. Folks, thanks very much. As always, I've been Shawn King. Take 3. 3, 2. I'll fix this in post. Don't worry about it. 3, 2, 1. Thanks, everybody, for joining us here this Wednesday evening. As always, I've been Shawn King.
And I'm Melissa.
Thank you! And you've been listening to Your Mac Life. Thanks very much, y'all. See you. Bye.